Good deal.
Okay, I gotta get. I'm as usual. I was just sharing with Jamie that I'm always last minute, kind of pulling things together, and just my operating system, if you will.
And I'm just the opposite. I'm like, I got to have everything like lined up, but this actually stresses me out. Like going live, I'm going, well, let me see. I got to make sure that we're actually live on LinkedIn. Like, just make sure all that's working and
yes,
that fun stuff. So I just like to have all my ducks lined up. And Mark's kind of like, show up at the last minute, not the last minute. Like he's been working on stuff, getting prepared for this, but that like, okay, now that we're live, I'm gonna set it up. All right, I do see that we're live.
So classic. So welcome everyone. Those of you who are joining us, and I hope that there's people that are joining us. That would be really cool. That's exactly why we're here, is to share some ideas and to have some great discussion. And Jamie, any other kind of points on that, or?
No, but do we want to ground ourselves in what the topic is today?
Yeah, I'm just gonna. I think. Forgive me. I'm just kind of. I'm one of those people, and I know this is, by the way, a little lesson. So we all, and this is off topic, not today's topic. We're going to dive in the morning. We're going to dive in a minute to marketing without the mask. So how to show up online without selling out, which I think is a great topic that I think everybody has top of mind. It's that idea of authenticity, but we'll do a little off topic thing here for a moment. And that is something that, and by the way, full disclosure, transparency here, I harp on Jamie all the time on this particular point, and she probably knows what I'm going to bring up. And it's exactly the sin that I just was guilty of, and that is multitasking. So anybody, I know it's like an addiction, right, Jamie? Like multitasking, we know how bad it is. We know how, like we just go, I know that if I choose to multitask, I'm going to be about 10% effective. I'm going to get, 1/10 of things done, but I choose to do it anyway. So it's like an addiction, isn't it? It's something that's kind of in our heads. And I don't know, I think it's something that we could all use a little. By the way, if that's a new concept to you, if you still think that multitasking is a great thing, I would encourage you to kind of go, be aware of when you're multitasking, and also do a little study and do a little research on it. And I think that's a big thing. It's great. Any topic, any habit that you kind of find yourself becoming aware of, I didn't know that I didn't know, and now I know, dig into it a little bit, and that kind of builds up your confidence about making a change. So anyhow, that's what I was doing, multitasking. So clapping myself.
I agree with that. I'm also a big fan of a to-do list. I really have to be able to, I can't start my day without my to-do list all organized by, priority, project, all of that. And then I love to just check the boxes. So I do multitask. I got to stop that, but I probably never will. But
we all do it, right? It's just it's just one of those things. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here.
Speaking of like taking off the mask, right? The marketing without the mask kind of thing.
Exactly.
We are doing our own like marketing, and we're taking off our own mask of.
Is that showing up, Jamie?
Yes.
Is that working?
It's working. Yeah.
You can see us too, though. We're just playing around.
Yeah.
And I think this is part of kind of the message today too, is being authentic, not polished, not is what. Isn't that what we all crave? That authenticity, that rather than the slickness, if you will. Yeah. Is that true for you, Jamie? Do you feel that?
Authenticity all the way. Yeah. And it's hard. It took me a long time actually to kind of get comfortable with even being on camera.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way. Tell you that. I didn't think I could be on camera without like a script, or I have to read from a teleprompter. I have to look at the camera just the right way.
Yep.
And I'm like, my camera's up there, and if I look up there, I don't feel right. So I just kind of look at the person I'm looking at, and I know it doesn't translate, but that's okay.
I know. And I know that's what I love about and have always loved about you, Jamie, and what drew me to you was your authenticity, was your ability to just step out and be you in your presentations and your videos and everything, and say, I don't care. I don't care if I got the fancy background or if I've got the fancy script. I'm just gonna share from the heart, and I think that comes through. I think one of the things that Jamie and I talk about when we work with people and in our approach for creating clarity and creating consistency in a business is this idea of authenticity, and this idea of letting go of comparison. Because if visibility feels fake, then you're doing it wrong. So the idea of warts and all, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we're doing these lives, and we're going to keep doing them. And by the way, this is we're starting to get a little better at our messaging. We're getting a little better at helping you identify and find us. So this is something where we call it the Impactful Coach, and we have a newsletter too. Go to either of our profiles on LinkedIn and you'll be able to subscribe to that. But that's what these sessions are all about. We call them power sessions, and they're all about impact and influence. So being an impactful coach. So these aren't webinars. Our intention is not to present a webinar, but to have a real conversation about these topics. And in today's topic, we want it to be a real conversation about what it actually costs you to be visible when it doesn't feel honest, because that is a huge cost. And then how to reclaim your voice without selling out, right? Without feeling like your visibility is based on a sales pitch or whatever. So, you don't need to market with a mask to get paid, and you don't need to perform to be seen. I think about, sorry, Jamie, I'm dominating a bit, but I think about my wife and I always have this conversation too about, like, I won't mention any, well, maybe I'll mention a few names, but some rock stars over the years that, any, not even rock, but all music that you think, my God, they can't even hold a tune. They're horrible. And yet, look at the infamy that they have in the world. So I'm thinking of Bob Dylan and I'm thinking of Neil Young.
Me too. Oh my God. I always say I can't stand their voices, either one. Sorry, any of you fans out there, but
I am a fan. I just love.
Yeah, I know I can't stand the voice. Like,
and it drives my wife nuts. And yet we both love the music. And there's many others in there too. And it's just an example. I think it's a great example of authenticity, of just singing from the heart and the poetry and the meaning behind the words, that it doesn't matter, if you can't even carry a tune, because the world is listening to your authenticity, to the real you. Don't you think that's a great, I don't know if we call it a metaphor or what it would be, but I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I'll just pop in here with, I happen to be a Swiftie, so I love Taylor Swift. And speaking of authenticity, like, she's been that since she was, a child and growing up in this industry, and just, her authenticity comes through in everything she does. And she doesn't put on a mask when she's on stage or off stage. She's the same person. Anybody will tell you that. I've never met her, but anybody who has met her and has shared about their experience of meeting her, that's who she is.
Yeah.
And so that's really cool when you can have a successful business, your own business, being exactly who you are, warts and all. And maybe you have warts, maybe you don't, but just being able to be yourself. Like I always say, my business is an extension of who I am anyway. I don't have to come to my home office and go, all right, who am I going to be today? Who am I going to act like? No, I'm going to act like me.
Yeah. I know, and you hear that too. I the idea of Taylor Swift and other people, these are, celebrities were just like you and me. They started, they were born, and then, as the saying goes, they pulled their pants on one leg at a time, just like you and me. And then, due to their path and their talent and their skills, some born, but most learned, they achieved this level of notoriety where people started looking at them. And Yeah, and isn't it the ones that we gravitate towards the most, that are loved the most, that are authentic? When people say, they're just in life, they're just really nice, and they're just like they are. Like there's no
Yeah.
mask there, if you will. And then the celebrities where we always hear, the gossip rags and everything that talk about the celebrities that come across as these sweet, really nice people, on stage and everything, but they're really nasty to people. And we don't like that, do we?
No.
Yeah. So I think this really applies to us, is how can you tap into that authenticity? And where does this mask come from? So I did do a little prep, Jamie, and if with your permission, I'd like to share a few thoughts here.
Yes, please.
And by all means, if anybody pops in, Jamie, I think you can see it, but I can't see it.
The chat. So if anybody is commenting, we will acknowledge that one.
Right, and hopefully these are being broadcast. I think they are. I think we kind of got through some of our technical challenges, but these lives will be showing up on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So if you're on any of those platforms, join in. Jump in.
Yeah, even if it's after this is done, and when the live is done, you can still comment. And we'll still get your comments and we can respond as well.
Yeah, and we'll keep the conversation going after the live, because that's really important. And again, that's part of what we're hoping to communicate in terms of our authenticity. Is this isn't a marketing ploy or something to, just a one-off that we do every week, and we hope that somebody, jumps in and wants to buy from us or whatever. This is playing in the sandbox. This is our part of being part of the community. And I think that's another, and again, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. We'll do another topic on that, but I'll just say a moment on that. Is this idea that, are you using and really abusing the community, or are you contributing and participating to the community? So Jamie and I believe in our hearts that the service community, the entrepreneurial community, the coaching community is something we're really passionate about, and we believe makes the world a better place because of it. And that's why we want to participate in that community. And I know this is a little bit of a sideline, Jamie. I'm going a bit off topic here, but it amazes me. Jamie and I are constantly reaching out to people, typically on LinkedIn. And one of the things that we do is we always ask, hey, we'd love to have what we call a market research call with you. Meaning we want to find out your perspective. We want to find out what's going on in your life and your business and your world, what's working for you, what's not working for you. And we want to share that with other people in our community, so for the betterment of all. Mm-hmm. And what I find really sad is, I would say over 90% of the people that I reach out to go, no, not interested. At first I used to get angry about that, full disclosure, but now I just feel sad about it, because it just tells me that over 90% of the people in our community are kind of those users and abusers. They're looking to take from the community, but they don't want to give anything back.
Mm. Well, I have the opposite. I actually, when I reach out to people, my calendar does get filled up with those market research calls. So maybe there's something in the messaging there, but
maybe, I don't know. So so you said the opposite. So you're finding like 9 out of 10 people say, I'm in. Like you're
9 out of 10, but I don't get anybody going, no, I'm not interested. It's just, I don't pay attention to those who don't respond. So if they say they're not interested, I really don't get people that say I'm not interested. They either book the call or they don't. And I do get people that book that call, and they're happy to give me the feedback. And we ask on the booking form, or I ask on my form, what's the current state of your business? Are you struggling, surviving, or thriving? And I would say I get a good mixture of people. And this is the beautiful part. So I wanted to piggyback on what you're saying, because I do have a good amount of people who claim to be thriving. And I wouldn't say I don't believe them. I think we could all always improve. But what I love about those people who check that box and say they're thriving is that they're wanting to contribute to the community. They're not looking for help. They're not like, oh, I'm going to go on this call with Jamie and she's going to try to sell me something, so I'm going to say I'm thriving. No, they're like, no, I've done well for myself and I'd like to contribute to discussion.
Yeah.
So that to me feels really good, you know, and
Yeah.
I'd say we get a third, thriving, surviving,
Yeah.
or struggling. Yeah.
Cool. And yeah, I need to qualify when I say that is a number of people say I'm not interested, but the majority of people just don't respond.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they go silent. And this is this is on LinkedIn. Now, presumably you forgot why LinkedIn is there. It's a networking community. I mean, that's the whole idea. And it just shows how many people are using LinkedIn or thinking that the way to use LinkedIn is not to be part of the community, but to somehow use the community. And I don't want to be negative about this, but I love what you said about that too. And I think what I've found in those people that do say yes, Jamie, that 10% that I do manage to speak with, and and many of them do say all three, as you say, probably a third, and a third, maybe. But what I love about it is where they're thriving is in their attitude and their mindset.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know,
Definitely.
and that idea of they're coming on the call not to get something, but to think, hey, and many times I'll have them say, I don't know if I can contribute much.
Right.
And I'll say, let's get on anyways. And there's always something to contribute. There's always, and we often forget about what is working or what's worked for us. And when we get into these conversations, it's great because, yeah, we definitely can highlight some things and find things that aren't working. But it always is an affirming experience because I find I come away from those calls learning something from everyone. And in most cases, I find people come away from those calls on their side going, wow, you know what? I feel kind of affirmed after that because there is stuff working in my business, even though maybe I'm struggling. So
yeah, and there's one more thing. I have people sometimes who, like you said, you know, they don't feel like they have enough to contribute, or I get people who say, well, I'm just starting in my business. I really don't have any feedback to give you. And I'm like, you're actually in the perfect place because you are jumping down that rabbit hole and maybe you're not sure what you're in for. And maybe our conversation can enlighten some of the journey that's going to be ahead for you.
yeah,
I'm going to ask you questions that are actually going to get you thinking.
exactly. And so they can take that next step.
Yeah.
And discovering like we're doing this week, we're doing our 5-day map workshop. And one of the things we talk about is coming with the mindset of, I don't know what I don't know. I'm reading a book about this, by the way, right now. Is this idea of learning. Where do we get to that place of learning? And the very best place that we can begin and the most powerful way to get into a learning mode is by saying, I don't know what I don't know. Mm-hmm. And when we do that, then we open up. And the challenge is many people focus exclusively on, well, I know what I know, and I'm just going to stay in that arena. But the real growth comes from going into the arena, and it can be scary. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to take the risk of saying, I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
So I've got a saying, and I know this, I'm sure I've stolen this from somebody, and it's probably, might even go back to Stoic wisdom or something, but it's, the older I get, the more I know how much I know, the more I know how much I don't know. The more I know, the more I know how much I don't know. So it's actually that unknowing is getting bigger for me every day. And I love that. I mean, to me, that's life. I mean, that's exciting for me, because it stimulates that curiosity in me. The more I know, the more I know how much I don't know. Wow, that's a cool place to be. Yeah, it's a really cool place to be. Anyhow, we digress dramatically.
Yeah.
We'll have to come back to these.
We're still on topic, though, really.
We're kind of on topic because this is being authentic, right? Yeah. But let's hopefully give some power to this, because I did make some notes on this, and I love to share visuals, even though sometimes they don't show up as well as they should be showing up, right? Yeah. Is that readable, Jamie?
Yeah, it is. I'm even looking at it on my phone and it looks fine. Yep.
Great. And literally transparency here. I whipped these together. That's what I was multitasking about. I like to have talking points. And I'm not an expert, but I have done some study and some reading in NLP and stuff. So I do know that when we're having conversation, it's always nice to have a visual, that we can go to. I'm a visual person. So
well, I always like to read along. Like when I'm in like somebody's giving a webinar, I love it when they have words on the slide and I can read along with them.
Yeah. And that's cool. So, and it also kind of gives some structure so that we can help. And our brains, I think, like this too, is instead of a rambling conversation where our brains are trying to figure out where the heck this is going, when we're able to structure it in points like this and be able to see it on screen, it helps. So, so these are the things that came up for me. And some of the things that I've been thinking about and that I just whipped together literally when we went live is the first one, is this idea of wearing a mask, and we all wear masks. So the idea of let's work on getting rid of the mask. And the first part of that is what I would call the persona pressure. So looking the part. One of my mentors, the late William J. McGrain, called this self-image. So he said, self-image is a projection that we put to the world of who we want the world to see, who we think the world wants to see, who we think we should be seen as. And Bill McGrain talked about that as being the greatest threat to our self-esteem. So another word for that would be the persona that we put on, looking the part. So, it's this social facade. It's trying to look like something we're not. And this is where this idea of polish comes in, right? I want to look polished. I want to look credible, so that I can earn people's trust, when in fact we all see right through it. So you could think about phrases like this, and I'll use that should word again. I should look professional. My brand should look as good as somebody else's or better, right? Jamie and I call that shoulding on people. Mm-hmm. So we try and avoid that word. Mm-hmm. This idea of this persona. As a matter of fact, in our map workshop yesterday, we had a brief conversation. Somebody brought this up in the chat, was the idea of imposter syndrome, right? And this is what this is all about, right, Jamie? Is this idea of how come you have imposter syndrome? Because you're not being yourself.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, right?
Yeah, like maybe you're afraid that yourself isn't enough.
Yeah.
And that's just not true. Like that's a fallacy. Of course you're enough.
Yes.
But
so
yeah.
True. It's kind of a myth that we tell ourselves,
Yeah.
And it's not our fault. It's not anybody's fault, because that myth wasn't something that you came up with. It's something that was slowly fed into you over your lifetime, where that idea of not being enough or somebody being better or comparing yourself to others. So really important to let that go, to take off the mask. And it's hard. It's hard to do, but trust us. And Jamie, I know you'd concur, but I'll let you concur, is that's what people are attracted to. People want to see the real you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking to myself, there's so many of our like testimonial videos that we have on our website that we've been collecting for years. And sometimes I look at those videos and I go, I look like crap. And I'm going, well, that's because you were meeting with a client that day and you were just comfortable and like, you're not trying to sell to them. So you're just kind of comfy and you're, maybe my makeup looked horrible. My hair looked terrible. I was in some ratty clothes. And I'm like, and now they're on video on our website. But I'm like, that's okay. Like, instead of worrying about, oh, I can't put that video up because I look like crap,
Yes.
And I was a lot heavier too, so it's like, I always had that judgment about myself, but I had to get over that. Like I was like, at the time in the beginning of my business, I'm like, well, if I want to grow my business, I better get comfortable with being on screen, no matter what I look like,
Yes.
Wishing I was thinner, wishing I was looked better, whatever, and, even that's true today, but I think I've just gotten a lot more comfortable with just, here I am, slept on some lipstick before I got in here a minute ago and, just want to look somewhat polished, but it's okay if I'm not. It's okay.
Yeah. Some days we just don't feel like it. And that's okay. And I know, like Jamie, that, many times we have clients that then when they're working on their content, because they've stayed in isolation, and then we really push them, okay, let's get some stuff out there so that people can actually hear you and see you and get your ideas so they can be attracted to you, because nobody's going to be attracted to you when you're locked in a closet. But one of the first things that often happens with people, whether they've been putting stuff out or not, is they'll say, oh, I spent all day yesterday creating a 5-minute video. I go, it was a 5-minute video. Oh yeah, but I had to do it 10 times.
Right. I used to
What?
do
Well, I
that.
didn't look right. I didn't like the lighting. I changed my
Yeah.
shirt 5 times. Oh, and I made mistakes. Like,
Yeah.
I had a script and I kept fumbling my words and everything. How does that feel?
Yeah.
When you're done that, and you think it's all polished, did that feel good? I mean, did that feel like, wow, I really, am being me? I think it feels awful.
There's something to be said about like what we're doing here. Like this would have been so out of my comfort zone. Mark would have had to literally put a gun to my head for me to like do this. But there is something really kind of cool about like we're live. Like this is not like a pre-recorded, let's polish it up and then like I'm going to edit it and then I'm going to put like some music to it and fix the lighting and blah blah. No, we literally came into this room, which is our little studio. It's online, and by the way, Mark and I are at totally opposite ends of the continent, in fact.
Yes.
But here we are, like just live, just winging it. Like we've got some bullet points, but it's perfectly okay to just jump on and
Yeah.
just be yourself and talk like yourself. If you think about it, the people that I know, for us, I could speak for both of us here, the people that we really look up to, want to emulate or whatever, they just are. They don't mind. They could be walking down the street and they'll just put on their their selfie video while they're walking. I don't think I would ever do that, honestly. But
Yeah.
they'll be walking and having their little selfie, holding it and just doing it and off the cuff like that. And I think we all have to get to a place where we're just comfortable doing that, or else
Yeah.
we might risk not being able to. And it's not about like just creating content for the sake of content. If you're creating content, it's usually for a purpose. We call it that, content on purpose. We actually have a giveaway that we have.
Yeah, we have a whole workbook and a video on that.
Yeah.
Content on purpose. So yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So just getting comfortable with just throwing yourself out there.
Yeah.
Warts and all, makeup, not
Yeah.
makeup. I don't know, Mark. Do you maybe you don't wear your makeup? I guess.
No,
Yeah.
I don't wear my makeup, but I do. I don't know. It's a habit of mine. I don't feel comfortable if I haven't shaved. I think I'm
Yeah.
old school. And particularly because I've got so much gray. I hate scruffy gray. I feel like a bum if I've got scruffy gray. Although you'll catch me on the weekends looking that way sometimes.
Sure.
But yeah, that idea, and I wanted to kind of piggyback on that idea. If we see these people online and we go, oh my God, they're so polished, they're so like think about the Gary Vaynerchuks I'm thinking about, or some of the other ones that just you go, wow, I just hang on every word and everything. But if you pause for a minute, you think about it, they're just talking. Especially Gary, he swears a lot, but he's very unscripted. And how did he get that way? Well, he got that way through practice, through just doing it.
Yeah.
So the very best thing you can do, and we know everybody tells you this, is that just start doing it like this, like start going live, forcing yourself. And that's a great way to draw out that authenticity and to be the real you. But the on purpose thing I think is important too, is not just a rambling thing, not talking at people. That's why Jamie and I love to do this together. And by the way, in future power sessions, we're going to be bringing on guests as well that can rap with us, so that we can kind of expand the community, if you will, and maybe make it a little more attractive to talk about instead of just seeing Jamie and I. But let's move on to another point, because we also like to keep these fairly tight in terms of about 30 minutes. So that they don't drag on. But the second thing that comes up, and Jamie knows I'm a big one for using this word, the algorithm. But algorithm anxiety is what I came up with, chasing visibility. So, and that idea of chasing, we often talk about experts never chase, right? So when you're trying to should on people, when you're trying to force them into being a client, and we do a little role play on this where you're constantly on top of people and pushing them, that's chasing. That's not the way to be authentic. The way to be authentic is to be attractive. And that's what we hope we're doing here, is that somewhere along the line, if you're watching this, that you go, I kind of like these two. I'd like to hang around with them. I'd like to find out more about how I can be part of their community. That's kind of our purpose for doing this. And with context though, and putting the context to this is this idea of the mask and marketing without the mask. So, this idea of chasing visibility and having anxiety over, my likes. So, this idea of, we'll call it the external approval, right? External approval. And it can turn into a loop, right? So that we're always looking at metrics in such a way that, did I get likes? Did I get shares? Did I get impressions? And I'm going to suggest to you that metrics are good, KPIs are good, but the real metric is, did I get connection?
Mm-hmm.
So Jamie and I'll look at our metrics often and we'll go, okay, how many, thumbs up did we get? Or how many people, how many impressions did we get? But the real number we love to look at is engagement. Did people participate in the conversation? Because if they participated, then we know that we're making a connection.
Yeah.
So, this idea to pivot, if you will, that if I'm constantly chasing these things, is that sustainable? And it's not, because you'll wear out, right? You wear out if the numbers don't come through.
Yeah.
Thoughts on the idea of chasing the algorithm or chasing visibility or just chasing in general, Jamie?
Well, I still believe in putting yourself out there. And, sometimes, like, for example, like we're recording this right now live. Some people are able to watch it right now, but other people are going to catch it later. We've done a good job of promoting it. So, people will catch it later. So put stuff that's valuable out there. And one other, can I just give a little tip? Repurpose. Like,
Yeah.
When we do these lives, we may not get much engagement on the event page, but we repurpose it into a podcast, right? We take the audio, we put that into our podcast. We create little clips that we then put onto social media. So there's so many layers to what you can do in your marketing. So don't worry about, like, if this particular platform didn't get a whole lot, this would be seen. In fact, I got like some stats on our YouTube, like our videos on YouTube do better than on LinkedIn, believe it or not, even though it's live on LinkedIn, but people see it later.
Yeah.
So So don't worry about the algorithm, like you're talking about that. Don't worry about, just be yourself. I don't like those things of like, oh, I gotta, put in, I gotta make it full of keywords and this and that. I mean, there's some relevance to that, but I wouldn't like, bet the farm on it kind of thing.
Yeah. And I what comes up for me with what you just said there was beautiful is that instead of chasing visibility, create visibility.
Yes.
Right. So often, like, people will come to us very often and they don't know what they don't know. And we'll say, okay, so where do you want to be? What do you want to be? And very often people say, well, I'm a thought leader. And we'll go, great. Have you Googled yourself? Let's Google you. And this really, brings it to the forefront. And I don't mean this to be nasty, but it's just a reality check. Google yourself. If you think of yourself as a thought leader, well, you know what leadership requires? Followers. You can't be a leader if nobody's following you. And I don't mean following in the sense that, oh, I got a lot of followers on LinkedIn or Facebook. No, I mean, are you building relationships where you're actually leading the conversation? And the only way to lead the conversation is to be visible. So it's the opposite of chasing visibility. It's creating visibility. And I love the way you just put that there, Jamie, is putting the repurposing the content and everything, because what are you doing? You're creating visibility. You're on the forefront of it. You're not chasing it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's wrap up kind of with a third thought here. And this idea that I put down, this third point I put down, is expert impostoring. So, and we talk about this in MAP, that your business only needs to be as complicated as it needs to be. So overcomplicating so that you sound credible can also be a real challenge, right? If I don't sound smart enough, no one will want to engage with me. If I don't sound smart enough, nobody will hire me. So I got to pad my content and make it really overcomplicated. Sometimes, Jamie, I'll talk about this in terms of and you've all heard this, if you ever read anything about copywriting, is a lot of people like to use the lingo and the slang, within a certain industry. And we talk about it, talking to people at a PhD level. And that doesn't sound or feel authentic at all, does it? So we always talk about, copywriters will tell you this, speak to people and write to people in an authentic way so that a grade 7 student could understand what you're saying. Use language like that rather than trying to overcomplicate and sound credible. Because then you just end up, over explaining and you're hiding behind complexity, right?
Yeah.
And this is a real challenge where, and it's very easy to get caught in this trap, is in social media and everything. We're constantly being bombarded with the free course or the mini course or the cheap course or whatever. So we end up on a loop of an addiction, really, of constant course taking, right? So we're constantly taking courses, and so that we can sound smarter, so that we can come up with that fancy phrase or that slick slogan. And isn't that the opposite of relationship building?
Yeah, I wrote down the word I wanted to talk about, what you were just saying. We need to be relatable. If we're speaking over people's heads, we're not relatable. And if you think about from a coach's perspective, usually you're coaching I would hope that you're coaching from a place of, I've walked this path and I've overcome the challenges that now you, reader, watcher, listener, are dealing with.
Yes.
And so I'm going to help you to get beyond that. But I've got to be able to speak to those people who are kind of coming behind me on the path and go, I've chopped down the trees. I've made the way here. And you have to speak to them on that, like, very kind of basic level, not above their head, not like I've walked this path and therefore I'm like way up here.
Yeah.
You really just, like you said, at 7th grade level where they just get it. You just share something and they get it.
Yeah. And that
share your journey. Yeah.
Share your journey, share your story, let them share theirs. So it's a collaborative, it's a conversation, not a waiting to speak idea, right?
Yes.
So it's drawing upon, hopefully what we're modeling or doing is the idea of, Jamie says something because I'm listening and it sparks a thought in me to contribute to that topic, as opposed to waiting for your turn to talk.
Yes. Right.
Right. And very often, and I know Jamie, like, we've been at this a while. We're a little long in the tooth that way, but never too long in the tooth. But we've had many opportunities for people to present to us. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the vast majority are people just waiting for their turn to talk. So they might ask questions, but they're not listening. So those ones that come through that are really authentic and genuine and listen jump out at us, because unfortunately they're the exception to the rule. Yeah. True, Jamie?
Very true. Very, very true. Yes.
Yeah.
We all want to feel heard.
Yeah.
Not just that somebody's listening, but that you heard what I said and you can even repeat it back to me because you were listening so intently. Yes. And you're processing what you want to say, but you're not jumping in over what I'm saying to get your point across. You're waiting for that, you're kind of waiting and, just being, what's the word, cordial. I can't think of the right word, but like you're waiting your turn, but you've got it. Like, that's why I'll give you guys a little tip. I always have a notepad next to me, and usually it's one of these write-on wipe-off boards, and whenever I meet with somebody, I take really diligent notes, and I'll write down like just a couple little 2-phrase bullet points, and I'll always circle back to that. And I'll always say, okay, you said this, so let me talk about that for a second. And that way they feel heard. They're like, oh, she was listening, not only listening, but taking notes. I really value that. So that's a really big tip for you. Don't be thinking about how I'm going to sell this person. I could be thinking how I'm going to sell them, but I'm going to do it by modeling back what they've told me, and not just, hearing it and letting it go out of my head. I'm going to write it down. So like, even I wrote down the word relatable because Mark was talking and I just wanted to remember that that's what I wanted to piggyback on with that.
Yes. So. Yeah. And there's no shame in that. The idea of taking notes when you're talking to somebody. In fact, I think it's honoring when you take notes. I think that's really respectful because it shows that you're listening, and it shows that what somebody is saying, it demonstrates that what somebody is saying is important enough to take a note about.
Yes.
So I love that, that idea. And yeah, Jamie and I both do it in different ways. Jamie's got this really cool kind of techie thing that she can write on, almost like a tablet. And I always just have typically I'll have a notepad screen, just a really simple one on my screen. I used to always I still do. I always have a notepad on my desk, but I do tend to, because I don't want to be looking down at my notes. I don't want.
Well, you have a big giant
on
screen.
My bald head.
You have a giant screen. I have like I don't know, this is probably a 20-inch screen. So I want to be present with the person. Like if I had a giant screen, and I do use my notepad all the time on my computer too, but
yeah. And it's handy. I can have it right there so that I can still kind of maintain eye contact, if you will.
Yeah.
And anyhow, this has been great, Jamie. We went a little long. We usually, our goal is to kind of chat for about 30 minutes. But thank you. If anybody is listening or watching, we appreciate you. Know that we are grateful to be part of a community that you're part of. I love what you brought up there too, Jamie, and what resonated with me was this idea of taking notes and listening, because it's also, I would suggest that the coaching community, whether you've been trained to do this, and many times this is part of your training, or it's just intuitive and natural for you. I think it's a combination of both, but that coaches in particular, are ones that know how to listen. And I think that's a skill that many people don't have, the skill of listening, the art of asking questions. And that, is a big part of our community. A big part of the people that we have the joy and pleasure of working with is that they are listeners. So, kind of on a final point, if you will, that comes to mind is, and we'll talk about this sometimes with our clients, is stop selling and start coaching. And we don't mean that like don't go into your area of expertise, but coach them through the sales process. Use your coaching skills to help somebody discover what you're offering, how it fits for them, and how their life can transform or be better because of that. So very often we kind of think that we need to not be coaches, and all of a sudden that marketing or being in business is a totally different skill set. And very often we see people doing this. We see coaches that all of a sudden become really pushy and aggressive, in their process. And we're going to say, wait a minute, would you treat a client that way? Of course you wouldn't. So use your gifts and your talents and your skills for asking questions and for listening. And that's a great way to remove the mask. That's a great way to be authentic. So you don't need to earn trust by being impressive, is what we're trying to get across here. You earn it by being real, and you earn it by being real consistently. So I think that idea, we use the word consistency a lot, and it's really important. That's why we do these every week. So I would encourage you, I'll just leave a closing comment, and then I'll turn it over to Jamie for any closing comments that she wants to chip in on. But I would encourage you to let this be the day that you let go of, that you release performance, that you say, I am going to stop performing and I'm going to start being present. Because when your message comes from the heart, when it comes from your truth, then marketing will take care of itself. Do you agree with that, Jamie?
I totally agree with that. I love that. Yeah.
Any other thoughts before we wrap?
No, I just wanted to promote our massive action plan workshop, or our monetize, accelerate, prosper. We do a workshop. We've referenced that a couple times. So it's scrolling across the bottom of the screen. But just anybody who's out there and, interested to know what that's all about, it's a 5-day intensive workshop. So you can find out the details there on the scroll. I took the dates off because we do it every now and again, so I figure we'll just leave it. So it's
around once a month or so, or depending on holidays and things like that and travel plans. But we try and do it about once a month. And by the way, no matter where you are in this journey, we would love for you to be there, because it's free and we go deep. And the most seasoned pro, I guarantee you, the most seasoned pro will get something from this workshop, and so will the person who is struggling and lost and doesn't even know where to start will get something from it. So it's not a it's a collaborative event. It is very didactic. I'll use a big word there. I do most of the talking, and I do, but I because I want to jam a lot of valuable content and exercises in there. But it is a very collaborative space where there's a lot of discussion. There's an opportunity to discuss after the fact. And it's all about what we see as a big missing piece, and that is the business skills and the foundational business skills that are required for any coach or consultant, for that matter, or anybody in the service orientation business online. But you can't make an income. You can't, turn something into your career, if you will, if you don't know how to create a business. So you create the business, and then your skills fit into that business. So we talk a lot about business skills and foundational business skills. And yeah, we've had people pop in that Jamie and I have had conversations with that are, I am thriving, I'm knocking it out of the park, I am a thought leader, I'm an expert, and they'll pop in on the workshop, and inevitably they always go, wow, you know what? I got something, or I forgot that, and you helped me remember it, or that was one of those blind spots of mine. So please come, play in the sandbox with us. It's our opportunity to be authentic with you, to share with you, to play with you, and to be better and a betterment to our community, if you will, because of it. So love to see you in our map. We're in the middle of one right now. It's day 3. And we'll watch for the next one coming up. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, and if you want to watch any of we also have some replays and stuff around too. So you won't even find those circulating online, but reach out to us if you're interested in that. If you can't, make the next one, or you want it sooner rather than later, jump in. So anyhow, this is not intended to be a pitch.
No, just want you guys to know.
Yeah, we want you to know, and we'd love you to come play with us in the 5-day map workshop.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we'll wrap it here. I'm going to end the stream, and I'll see you on the other side.
We'll wish you all the very best, and we'll see you next week if I'm here. I might not even be here. I don't think I'm going to be here, but Jamie will be here. So if one of us isn't, the other will be. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Jamie. Okay.